so you want to talk about contradictions, huh? You sent us this YouTube transcript, a snippet of Darren Gee holding forth. And knowing his history with Netflix and Panorama, this ought to be good. We're doing a deep dive into the mind of Darren Gee today.
What I found intriguing about this particular transcript was how it offers this glimpse into his thinking about relationships,
Okay.
especially given what we know about his past.
Okay, so jump right in. What stood out to you? Like, how does he talk about relationships here?
I think it's not even just the advice itself, but it's the language that he uses this phrase. For example, man can do for a woman knocked off a previous relationship. Clear the energy, make it pure again. It's almost like he's positioning himself as a kind of energy cleanser. I don't know.
You know, that's not even something I would necessarily clocked as like particularly strange just because there's so much like self-help stuff that uses this kind of vague energy talk. But coming from him, it does hit different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that contrast, I think, between the message and the messenger that makes it so compelling.
Totally.
You know, considering his past, which he himself alludes to with mentions of a Netflix documentary, it makes you wonder if this is a genuine attempt to offer advice or a calculated move to kind of control the narrative around his past.
Right.
You know, could relatability be a tool for image softening?
Yeah.
A thought.
And he keeps returning to this idea of energy, doesn't he? Like, he talks about how mistreating a woman will negatively impact her energy for months.
Right. And that's where it starts to feel a bit unsettling, I think. It's one thing to talk about energy in a general sense, but he's framing it almost like a weapon, something men can use to manipulate women. Does that sound familiar to you at all? In a broader sense, I can think of a few other self-help gurus who used very similar language.
Oh, absolutely. And that makes you wonder about his audience then, too. Who is he speaking to here? Is it men looking for guidance, or is it more about reinforcing a certain image? Like a reformed bad boy who understands the power dynamics at play?
It's a good question. And I think it speaks to the larger theme, I think, of authenticity that runs through this entire transcript.
Yeah.
You know, is Darren Gee trying to be genuine here, or is this just another performance?
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, because we're not just unpacking a transcript, we're peeling back the layers of a persona that's been very carefully constructed over time.
It's not even just the relationship advice that feeds into this whole persona thing.
Right.
Like, you pointed out how his YouTube persona kind of bleeds into the relationship stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also in these little throwaway lines about his, like, day-to-day life.
It's the whole, like, broken phone charger, craving hobnobs and milk thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, those details seem so random, so mundane.
Yeah.
But you put them next to him, talking about Netflix documentaries and everything we know about his past, it's this strange dissonance.
Yeah. It's almost as if he's trying to normalize himself, to make us forget that this is a guy who's been in the public eye for all the wrong reasons. And maybe it's a way of humanizing himself to an audience who might already have these preconceived notions.
I'm with you on that. It's like he's trying to control the narrative,
Yeah.
showing us a side of himself that's relatable,
Yeah.
even vulnerable. And it makes you wonder, is that just another layer of the persona? Or are we actually seeing a glimpse of the real Darren Gee?
Okay, so then how does this comment about removing tattoos play into all of this? Because that one really threw me for a loop.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
You know, he mentions wanting to get tattoos removed because he thinks that the symbols mean something else now.
Yeah.
And on the surface, it could be interpreted as personal growth, a desire to distance himself from the past. But then again, is it really that simple?
Right. It feels very performative. Like, he's aware that even his attempts at self-improvement can be fodder for public consumption. It's almost like he can't help but turn these personal decisions into something that just reinforces this public image.
Exactly. And that it circles back to our earlier point about authenticity versus persona. I mean, is he genuinely trying to change? Or is this just another carefully calculated move? It's a question that I think lingers throughout the entire transcript.
Yeah. And it's something that, we grapple with constantly in today's world, right? This idea of online personas versus who we are in our day-to-day lives. The line is so blurred.
It is. And you know what else struck me about those everyday details he throws in?
What's that?
It's almost like he's playing with this idea of what people expect from him.
Okay.
He's saying, yeah, I'm the guy from the documentaries, but also struggle with a broken phone charger, just like you.
It's interesting, though, how he throws those details into this transcript about relationships, though. Like, it's not like he's trying to impress anyone with his taste in snacks.
And that's what makes me think it's calculated. You know, he's playing with our expectations. We're primed to see him as this larger-than-life figure because of his past. And he throws in a perfectly ordinary detail just to make us do a double take.
So it's all about crafting a persona.
Not necessarily. I think it's more complex than that. Take that last part of the transcript where he claims people watch the documentary just for him. He even throws in that line about bringing in the numbers. It's like he's
Yeah.
acknowledging his notoriety while also maybe trying to reclaim it.
Yeah, that line really jumped out at me too. I do bring the numbers in, don't I? What is he really trying to say there?
I think it goes back to this tension between who he is publicly and who he is privately.
Yeah.
He knows people are fascinated by his story, by his past, and he's not afraid to leverage that. But there's also this sense that he wants to be seen as more than just the guy from the documentaries.
So where does that leave us then? It feels like we've gone through all this and we're no closer to figuring out the real Darren Gee.
Well, maybe that's the point. This transcript in its own way kind of highlights the impossibility of ever truly knowing someone based on these curated snippets they choose to share. It's like we're all piecing together a puzzle, but we only have half the pieces. And even those might be from different boxes.
It makes you think twice about how much we can ever really know about the people that we see online, right?
Absolutely. We're all telling a story.
Yeah.
And maybe the most intriguing stories are the ones where we can't quite tell where the performance ends and the real person begins.
Well, there you have it. This deep dive was a real rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Big thanks to you, as always, for helping unpack this. I'll never look at a hobnob the same way again. And to our listeners, we leave you with this. Think about the digital breadcrumbs you leave behind. What story are they telling?